This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. It looks like Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is likely to be removed from the line of succession, according to the Times. They're saying that after Keir Starmer and Buckingham Palace indicated their support for the move, the Prime Minister is willing to introduce legislation to strip Andrew of his right to succeed, and the Palace has said it will not stand in the way. So this is very interesting. So now the Prime Minister is the one who's calling the shots as to who gets to be in the line of succession? Like, I wish they would just rip the Band-Aid off already. This has been like such a long, drawn-out process. Back in 2019, Andrew stepped away from being a working member of the royal family. He kept his HRH, but it was only until last October when his titles were taken away. Now they're debating whether or not he should be in the line of succession. Just do it already. Like, this whole thing has become such a gong show, especially with this line of succession. When you look at these photos, putting Beatrice and Eugenie aside for a second because their kids aren't even pictured here, like, how ridiculous is this when you see little Betty and Archie in the line of succession and they don't even have proper photos? Like, what is that? It just shows, like, this is not serious. It really isn't. But anyway, this article from the Times says news of his arrest prompted calls for that right to be removed, requiring legislation that ministers will consider after the police investigation into Andrew has concluded. Andrew has been dogged for more than 15 years over allegations about his relationship with Epstein, a sex offender and millionaire who killed himself in his prison cell in 2019. But the arrest of the former prince on Thursday by Thames Valley Police investigating allegations he leaked confidential information to Epstein while a government trade envoy plunged the monarchy into a constitutional crisis. Now, let me ask you this question. How is it that they pick and choose what is an actual constitutional crisis? Like, what does that even mean? So if you Google constitutional crisis pertaining to the royal family, it says here that a constitutional crisis pertaining to a royal family scandal in the United Kingdom means that a personal or legal controversy involving the monarchy has escalated to a point where it threatens the established rules, traditions, or, in extreme cases, the existence of the monarchy within the UK's governing system. Because the UK has an uncodified constitution, no single document, the monarchy relies on conventions, public consent, and a reputation for stability to function. A scandal becomes a constitutional crisis when these elements are damaged. And I think Harry and Meghan have done that at least 5 times over by now. I mean, we've seen Meghan and Harry have been a threat to the legitimacy of the line of succession. We see them use their privilege and abusing their power, specifically when it comes to the rule of law. Let's not forget that Meghan lied in the UK courts. We also see that Harry and Meghan have been meddling here in the United States. I think interfering with a presidential election is enough to end the institution. So if indeed Andrew inadvertently gave secrets away to Epstein, then what? You don't think that that hasn't happened before with some of the other corrupted politicians in the UK government, like the current Prime Minister himself? I mean, hello? This current PM is morally bankrupt. A palace source said, the matter of removing Mr. Mountbatten Windsor from the line of succession is purely a matter for Parliament, and, of course, we would never get in the way of that or oppose the will of Parliament. Andrew also remains a Councillor of State, a member of the royal family who, along with another Councillor of State, can jointly deputize for the monarch. Although it has now been ruled that only working members of the royal family would be called upon to act in such a capacity, Andrew retains the title, which is granted to those in the order of succession. So apparently tonight, the Metropolitan Police announced they were expanding their inquiry into Andrew by approaching all his former protection officers. Scotland Yard said it was contacting present and former officers who worked closely with Andrew and called on them to come forward if they knew anything of relevance. The Met has said for years that it was not aware of wrongdoing by its officers, but has faced questions about the extent to which it has properly invested claims. It's really interesting that Andrew still has his protection officers, even though Charles had removed his titles and he is Mr. Mountbatten Windsor. How is that? The Met also said it was assessing allegations that London airports were used to facilitate human trafficking and sexual exploitation by Epstein. Gordon Brown, the former prime minister, has accused police of failing to properly investigate decades-old allegations and said Andrew should be interviewed. The FBI is helping with the sex trafficking inquiries, according to the Daily Telegraph, which reported that a senior officer from Scotland Yard's Exploitation Command emailed the Bureau last November asking for a meeting in regards to allegations that Epstein had flown to and from the UK multiple times with trafficked women. He received a response from the unnamed agent confirming that the FBI was happy to work with the Met's international unit on the claims. Well, if Gordon Brown is going to be throwing Andrew under the bus, then maybe they should look into Gordon Brown and that deal that they did with the Sultan that also is in question, and the deal that was made with the help of Lord Mandelson to open up that DP London Gateway. You can't talk about trafficking girls through the air without talking about trafficking girls through the sea. And I think that a raid of those shipping containers should be in order. Finishing up what the Times has reported, it says the Epstein files released by the U.S. Department of Justice have prompted allegations that officers assigned to Andrew turned a blind eye during visits to the financier's private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Officers also stayed with Andrew at Epstein's mansion in New York in 2010 after the financier's sex offense conviction. In December, the Met said it would take no further action over allegations that Andrew asked an officer to dig for information on Virginia Giuffre, who accused Andrew of sexually assaulting her on 3 occasions when she was 17. Andrew was alleged to have passed on her date of birth and social security number to a close protection officer. He said he did not remember meeting Giuffre, who took her own life last year, but paid a £12 million settlement to her in 2022. Shortly after his brother's arrest, which was the first of a member of the royal family for nearly 380 years, the king said that the authorities had our full, wholehearted support and cooperation. YouGov polling for the Times conducted before Andrew's arrest showed that the recent scandal had not dented Charles's popularity. 64% of the sample polled on Wednesday were positive about the king compared with 60% early last month. 90% felt negatively about Andrew. Asked if the king should continue to provide financial support to Andrew, 77% said he should not. Another 67% said he should not allow Andrew to live on the Sandringham estate. So what do you think is going to happen? I think the police are going to investigate and they're going to find, or if not already know, about a whole bunch of things that Andrew has done, but they're only going to report a fraction of it. And I think it's going to be just enough to show, yeah, justice is still working for the people, but not so much that it's going to damage or impact the reputation of the institution or even the Labor Party, because let's talk about Andrew's role and how his role came to be. I want to go ahead and show you this little gem that I found in the Epstein files. I'm really surprised that nobody has talked about this yet. But what we have here is official Buckingham Palace paperwork that is given to new hires to sign. In 2009, Andrew hired a contracted senior business advisor. And in 2009, Andrew hired a contracted senior business advisor. And in this packet, there were 3 documents which needed to be completed and returned. First one says Declaration of Interest. This is an annual return which is completed by those who work closely with members of the royal family and all senior managers. While elements of the declaration are not currently relevant, it would be helpful if you could provide full disclosure of your current business interests. Number 2, confidentiality agreement. 2 copies, one to be signed and returned to me. This is a standard document for any individual working in Buckingham Palace. And number 3, service agreement. I enclose 2 copies of your agreement, one to be retained by you and the other to be signed and returned to me. On the days that you are working with His Royal Highness at Buckingham Palace, you will, of course, be able to park your car on the forecourt and are advised to attend household lunch, if you would like to do so. For lunch, you will need to be booked in by 10 a.m. on that day through the office. In addition, we will ensure that you are invited to any receptions held at Buckingham Palace with a business focus as a member of the Duke of York's household. Now, this part seems particularly dodgy. It continues and it says, for sake of clarity, you will not be an employee of the household and are described as a consultant in the undertaking of confidentiality. However, for information, I have enclosed a copy of the reference manual for the household that applies to employees. This provides information on health and safety as well as security and confidentiality. But literally before, it just got done saying that you're invited to any receptions held at Buckingham Palace with a business focus as a member of the Duke of York's household. So how can you in one sentence say that you're a part of the Duke of York's household, but then say that you're not an employee of the household? I'm guessing this has to do with not wanting to give them any kind of benefits like health care or pension. But it continues on with the terms of agreement, and it gets into the role specification, which is what I want to show you here. So included in this packet is Andrew's background, and it says here, His Royal Highness, HRH, is the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment and has been performing this role since 2001. He works on behalf of the United Kingdom and its associated British territories. In this role, he works with businesses in many sectors, building and maintaining relationships on their behalf globally. He works with government, in particular through the government's International Business Development Organization, UK Trade and Investment, UKTI, which is a joint department of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, FCO, and the Department for Business, Enterprise, and Regulatory Reform. Now, many people talk about how the royals are supposed to remain politically neutral. But did you guys know that this role that Andrew was in was a government-appointed position, not something created or personally appointed by the Queen? This appointment was made with the agreement of the Labour government back in the day under Tony Blair. And everybody's seen that Tony Blair was associated with this Epstein satanic cabal. But continuing on here, it says, the Duke's role is focused on country-to-country business relationship building, supporting and promoting UK PLC, creating positive business conditions for British businesses investing overseas, supporting UK companies trading products and services in emerging and established markets, and promoting the UK as an attractive inward investment destination for foreign investors. Aiming to maximize opportunities for UK companies, the Duke's activities and responsibilities include maintaining strong government and business relationships in the UK and abroad, reinforcing UK business credentials for bids and projects, marketing UK PLC, for example, at international trade events and conferences and delivering keynote speeches on business issues, hosting high-level events in the UK showcasing business opportunities for UK companies overseas or for foreign investors in the UK, and providing feedback to business and government on business issues both in the UK and overseas. In 2008, the Duke will have conducted over 600 official engagements, 90% of these in his role as UK Special Representative. He will have carried out around 150 engagements in the UK in his capacity as UK Special Representative and approaching 400 overseas on visits including China, Mongolia, Korea, Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Middle East, North Africa, Eurasia, and Central Asia, India, Ukraine, the United States, and the World Economic Forum at Davos. Oh, yes, can't forget the World Economic Forum. The Duke's strategy in this role says the Duke has developed the role of UK Special Representative for International Trade and Investments significantly over the past 7 years, and commissioned an independent strategic review of the role in early 2008. The review indicated that HRH was highly valued by the UK businesses and that he should continue to develop the role as a unique and highly valuable UK asset. The government agreed and provided strong endorsement with increased funding to support the Duke's activities. As a result of the review, the Duke has developed a strategy to take the role forward, making the most effective use of time, ongoing relationships, geography, focusing on where he has the greatest potential to have greatest impact. A primary dimension of focus is geographic, emerging markets, and territories with a longer-term ruling governing counterpart. He will focus on supporting key international trade sectors, larger UK international businesses, and operating in smaller forums. A key outcome is seen as remaining versatile and be able to respond to high priority demands and opportunities. Following the strategic review, the Duke also needs to develop his private office, which the role has outgrown. As part of this development, a senior business advisor is required to support the effective delivery of HRH's strategy. Do y'all see what a clown Andrew is? He goes and he hires somebody to do a so-called independent review of his performance in his role. And obviously, it's going to come back with a glowing review saying how he's such a valuable asset to the UK government and businesses all around the world. Of course, of course. And that's why we need to give him more money so he can jet set around the world, hobnobbing with people like Epstein, all on the taxpayer's dime. And it is alleged that Andrew was negotiating private deals and making commissions off of it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that there's a bit of misconduct going on there with Andrew and the Labour government, which brings me to the point of talking about the royals not being political. They absolutely are, especially seeing that Andrew was hired by the Labour government. You can't get any more political than that. So I find it laughable when they say that this could potentially be a constitutional crisis. I think we are at least 8 constitutional crises past where we have seen how the royal family have veered away from its rules and traditions. And I think in the most extreme case, turned their back on the church. I think that's the biggest whammy of them all. The stability and reputation, I think, is damaged beyond repair at this point. And I find it hilarious that the PR machine for the Sussex is in overdrive trying to distance themselves away from Andrew and the Yorks. With these kind of headlines, with Harry being frustrated with the comparisons between him and his uncle. I mean, come on now. You forget that you wanted half in, half out, and your goal was to do the exact same thing with the Commonwealth? Let's not forget why these two left. They left to become financially independent. Well, how else were they going to do it? And Meghan alluded to the Yorks on Oprah when she explained that there were existing family members who had this half-in, half-out setup. And she was talking about the Yorks and Prince Andrew at the time. I said it from the very beginning. They wanted to go and pillage the Commonwealth. And they wanted to do it the same way that Andrew was doing it, flying around on the taxpayer dime, accommodations all paid for on the taxpayer dime, security all paid for by the taxpayer, private jet all paid for by the taxpayer. And then they were going to do their financial independence by striking up these private deals. They wanted to continue having the access by representing the Queen, but for their own selfish purposes, exactly what Andrew was doing. But you see, the Queen didn't want to play ball because she saw through Meghan. And that's where I think in 2021, when Meghan went rogue and pretty much destroyed everything on her Oprah interview, that's when I think these two tried to take matters into their own hands and do a similar half in, half out, set up royal court here. Miserably failed, even though there were powerful people behind backing them from the Democrat side. And we're talking all the way up to the highest position in our government, aka Biden. And I do believe that all those trips to Nigeria, Colombia, Jamaica, Canada, and all this other bullshit in New York was all being done on the US taxpayer dime. But those days are certainly over, and we've seen the dramatic shift in 2025 with Harry now trying to pretend that he wants to go back to the UK and focusing on his so-called patronages. I mean, he was off in Ukraine a few times. I wonder who was behind him for that. That definitely wasn't the United States. Could it be he was acting in the capacity like a Prince Andrew at the time? I think so. I think that he is doing dirty work for various governments, and don't think that he's not involved in the same sort of corruption that his Uncle Andrew is being investigated for. In my opinion, I think what Harry has been doing is a lot worse, especially when it involves our military. And I'll leave it at that. But what do you guys think? Do you think Andrew's going to be pulled out of the line of succession? Do you think they're going to find anything? You think he's going to get a slap on the wrist? Definitely let me know your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Such a fraud.